Welcome, everybody, to the Unquestionably Raw NBA podcast. Tonight, we've got some news and notes. We're going to go through our all-star starters of who we think should start, the big game and cover CP3's latest injury and what it means for the Clippers. And then we're going to kind of recap some quick notes on the Warriors, Cavs, and then preview the Warriors and Thunder for this evening. So, jumping right into the news and notes, Keith, I'm going to let you, take it away.
Yeah, so the first thing came out the other day. Luol Deng's going to be out for a little bit with some injuries. He's been kind of nicked up all year. He's had something going on with his wrist, his shoulder, his knee. He's an older player, so we're starting to see that point. I take this as it's kind of a good thing for the Lakers. Opens up more time for Brandon Ingram at his natural spot. Ingram also, it separates him from Clarkson and Williams on the second unit. He doesn't get as many touches, so he's able to play with the starting guys. He actually looked pretty good last night, played fairly well. Had a nice all-around game. You can see things are starting to come along for him offensively. So, I think that'll work out. I know, Matt, you had some thoughts on Ingram.
Yeah, I was just going to say he was fantastic, and you hit it perfectly with him in that starting lineup, not having to play with the black holes that are Lou Williams and Jordan Clarkson. Jordan Clarkson's becoming the new Marcus Thornton for me. Lou Williams, that's what he does. He's a proven veteran. I'm cool with that. But what has Jordan Clarkson done in the NBA to be able to be this guy who can just come in and gun? Like, he literally will come down, get an outlet or the rebound himself, dribble down, and shoot a fadeaway three with two hands in his face. It just makes no sense. I mean, you're trying to develop Ingram, and I think the starting lineup is perfect because we know D'Angelo Russell has a short leash. So if he starts playing stupid, and Luke Walton's trusting Ingram out there. I know the other night against the Pistons, even though he was terrible down the stretch, he kept him out there in the close game just to let him experience it, which I think is a good thing for him. And hopefully, he'll continue in this starting role because I think it's good for him. And he's starting to show he's going to be, of the three young guys on that team, looks like he's going to be the best one of the three. And then a quick shout out to Ivica Zubac, who was fantastic last night.
Nice.
Yeah, on Zubac, they're going to start giving him the minutes that were going to Pete Nice's favorite guy, Thomas Robinson. Which bums me out. It makes me sad.
It makes me sad inside.
Yeah, so, Pete, me and you, we'll keep that Robinson dream alive.
Yeah.
For the five of us that are left.
Maybe he'll get traded to somebody and actually get some spot minutes.
That's it, right? So Zubac looks like he's going to start seeing those minutes, and that's right. He's come a long way. He's played pretty well in the D-League. They've been happy with his performance down there and want to see what he can do. The Lakers are doing the right thing now, right? It's time they made that impressive early season run. They were in the playoff mix. Now it's time to step back, really turn it into a development season, let these guys get some minutes and go from there instead of, making a big push to try and win as many games as possible.
Yeah. Looking at, I guess, the next big news and notes would be Jared Sullinger's making his debut tonight. He's been out all season long. Still going to have some conditioning issues, of course. Obviously, the weight issues in the past. Keith, all too well, Jared Sullinger. But I think he's going to be a huge upgrade for what the Raptors need. They've long needed a starting power forward. Luka Nogueira is out as well. He has concussion protocol. Patrick Patterson's out, so Siakam and Sullinger will take the bulk of the minutes with Damari Carroll kind of sliding up, playing the small ball four. Omri Caspi.
One thing on Sullinger, sorry, before we step off him. He was signed to really ideally be their starting power forward and in addition be their backup center, more or less, too. So the good thing is by having him back in there, they have Nogueira's stepped up big time. He's been much better than I think they ever thought he would be. But it's going to be good for them to have Sullinger for that additional depth. They have to rely so much on Jonas Valanciunas to play more minutes than he really should be. So having Sullinger there is going to be helpful for the Raptors big time, as long as he can stay healthy and his conditioning isn't too far off where it needs to be.
Mm-hmm. And then Omri Caspi, out for 2 weeks with the sprained wrist. He's been in and out of the rotation all season, so I don't really know how much that makes a huge difference for Sacramento. Clint Capella returned last night for the Houston Rockets. started after missing a few weeks of action. News out of the Clippers, both good and bad. First, the good news. Blake Griffin's expected to travel on the 3-game road trip starting Saturday and is due back soon. And then the bad news, Chris Paul out 6 to 8 weeks with the torn ligament in his thumb. So we'll talk a little bit more about Chris Paul a little bit later on. But with the Blake news, they sorely need him, to step in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're going to need him. We can talk about it when we get into the Clippers, but they're going to need him to be that secondary playmaker. So I think that'll be good. I think with Clint Capella, what's going to be good for the Rockets with him being back is him being out allowed them to discover that Montrezl Harrell can really play. And he did great while he was out. So now they've kind of got almost a 3-headed monster there and an additional guy who can kind of back up at power forward behind Ryan Anderson. So the Rockets have a lot more depth than I think any of us thought they would at the beginning of the season.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I get some news and notes, some call-ups recently. Pierre Jackson called back up to the Dallas Mavericks. He played a couple games earlier this season, went back to the Texas Legends when he was released prior to his contract, or I guess prior to guaranteed contracts or whatever coming in. And then Gary Neal is back in the NBA, signed today to a 10-day contract with the Atlanta Hawks. Subsequent move with that, Mo Williams was dealt to the Denver Nuggets, allowing the Denver Nuggets to get to the salary cap room floor. And then basically he's going to retire from everything that I've read. I think he's coaching somewhere like high school level or something like that.
Yeah, he's been in Dallas. He said he's coaching some team in Dallas, like probably some like travel AAU type thing. But he said he wants to coach high school.
Yeah, and none of the young guys for Atlanta have stepped up. Bembry's been out for personal reasons, and then Taurean Prince has been okay, but hasn't really stepped in and taken that role. So I don't think Gary Neal's going to play tonight unless it's an emergency, but, look for him to get minutes on that 10-day. Okara White has been signed by the Miami Heat via the disabled player exception to a 10-day deal. Obviously, with Josh Richardson and then Josh McRoberts out, that allowed them to get the 4 players they needed out for, a long term to get that. But looking at the latest news, just kind of highlighting some stuff. Ricky Rubio, of course, he's been on the trade block, but now I guess they're actively shopping him per Woj's report, along with Shabazz Muhammad. So kind of the same teams being thrown out there, Sacramento. Keith, are you hearing anything else as far as Ricky Rubio, any teams?
Yeah, it's you said it. It's all the same teams that have been mentioned before. The challenge is they want to pair either Muhammad or Adrian Payne to Rubio to clear that off the books, or to pair them together to bump up the salary that can come back. Minnesota's also under the cap by a good margin, so they could definitely make a pretty big swing here if they can move Rubio. The problem around the league is not a lot of teams have use for a point guard who can't shoot at all. So that's the thing they're running into. It's just not a position where teams are willing to really throw that away at this point. So they're going to figure that out. They will get there and figure out what they need to do and make that move if they can. It's one of those where I think Minnesota's shopping him, but they're not ready to give him away. They're looking to see if they can do something. They want a bridge guy, someone who can come in and probably start for the remainder of this year and then transition into a backup role as hopefully Chris Dunn's ready to take over the primary starting job next season.
Absolutely. And last kind of topic that we touched on it on the last episode. Carmelo Anthony finally met with Phil Jackson, confirmed his stance that he wants to remain in New York. Just a bad situation all around, I think, for both sides, and he's not going to waive that no trade clause. So we can end all the rumors of trades being thrown Keith's way of Carmelo go to the Magic.
He'll waive the no trade clause if they send him to Cleveland or the Clippers. The problem is he knows that those teams don't have enough to give up to get him.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's the challenge, right? He's only going to go to play with his buddies somewhere, and they're not going to be able to make a deal like that happen without gutting their team with guys that they need. Somebody threw, what about J.R. Smith and Amon Shumpert at me today? The Knicks already had those guys and traded them to the Cavs. So why would they take them?
Exactly.
Now they want them locked up long term on for big money. That doesn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So.
I've seen a couple of things, little articles here and there, stuff on Twitter, people talking about the Celtics.
Go ahead, Keith.
Yeah, he's almost anti what the Celtics want because he's a ball stopper. Their entire offense is built around, people look at it and say, well, what is Isaiah Thomas? He gets his points in the flow of the offense.
Mm-hmm.
Carmelo's going to get it, hold it for 15 seconds on the wing and jab step 42 times and take the jumper. We all know what that is, and that's not what Boston wants from someone at that position. And at this point, when you factor in defense and contract, Jay Crowder is probably just as good for Boston as Carmelo ever would be.
Mm-hmm.
And better defender, of course, too. So
and not a ball stopper.
Oh yeah, and then with
42% from three.
There you go. Well, Boston will take that. And no offense to Boston fans at all, but it seems like every player that's a marquee name gets thrown the Celtics' way for the last few years just because of all the trade assets that Danny Ainge is kind of hanging on to. So you name the player, and they're attached to the Celtics, whether the Celtics want them or not.
It's going to keep happening until they use those Nets picks or they trade them.
Exactly.
No other way around it.
Exactly. So, all right, going into our next topic, we're going to name, with the All-Star starters being announced tomorrow night on TNT at 7 p.m., we're going to go ahead and name who we think should start. We're going to go ahead and start with the Western Conference. We all had the same picks for the Western Conference, so I'm just going to kind of fire them off here. Anthony Davis, Kevin Durant, Kawhi Leonard, and then we had who were the other two, Keith, that we had on there?
Russell Westbrook and James Harden.
James Harden, that's right. And then for the East, I'm going to let you fire it off, Keith, because you and I had the same 5, and then Matt's going to give his. His was a little bit different.
Yep. So front court, the two obvious ones that I think should get in there, and I think most people would have, are LeBron James and Giannis Antetokounmpo. Then Pete and I both have Jimmy Butler. Matt does not have him. He'll explain that in a second. Then in the backcourt, Pete and I both have Kyle Lowry and Isaiah Thomas. So just going through them one by one. LeBron's LeBron. He's going to be an all-star starter until he either doesn't want to be or he retires. Giannis, he's just ridiculous, so you got to have him out there. Butler, for me, I'm imagining Pete's in the same boat. He's been terrific. He's carried his team. They're not playing great, but he's not the reason why, certainly. Then in the backcourt, Kyle Lowry, to me, has been arguably behind Westbrook and Harden. If you want to call Harden a real point guard or not, he's been the third best point guard in the league. He's been so good. And then Isaiah Thomas, just the things he's doing, scoring the ball now and the way he plays in the fourth quarter, deserves some recognition and to get in there. And then before we throw it to Matt, these are not who we think will start the game, because we know there's some shenanigans going on with all that.
Oh, yeah.
Zaza Pachulia.
Exactly. These are who we think should start the game. So,
yes.
So, all right, absolutely. Matt, go ahead. Hit us with your East.
Absolutely. Okay, I have LeBron, Giannis, just like everybody else, and Isaiah Thomas. But I went with at my shooting guard position. No knock on Kyle Lowry. I just chose a traditional 2 guard. That's all. That's what was my tiebreaker. So I went with DeRozan. And real quick, let's give a big shout out to Byron, who we all laughed at when he picked Kyle Lowry as the 11th best player in the NBA. It's not looking so bad right now. Shout out to you, Byron.
Yeah,
he got that one right. Hell, Bleacher Report has him ranked 9th right now, so maybe Byron's on to something. And then in the last spot, the other front court spot, I went Kevin Love just because his team's winning. So I that was my tiebreaker with him and Jimmy. Just Cavs are in first place. The Bulls right now are below 500, so I'm going to reward winning. That's all.
Okay. And just so everybody knows, next week, we'll have an episode coming out late Tuesday evening, and we'll kind of touch on who we think should be the reserves for All-Star for both sides. So jumping into our third topic of the night, obviously the biggest news for the Los Angeles Clippers is, bad news, I should say, is Chris Paul out 6 to 8 weeks. You can't say enough about how bad this is for the Clippers. Every year there's injuries and they take their toll on this team. Are they cursed, Keith?
Starting to feel that way, right? It's starting to come down to it, but I think it's more than that. It's Chris Paul's a small guard who's older. So I think this is not entirely unexpected that he's been getting nicked up. The unfortunate thing is he's getting these weird injuries. He had the one, right? Wasn't he the one who got his thumb last year caught in the jersey?
Yep.
And now, he's hurt again this year. And, it's really disappointing. And, with these guys, they were starting to make a little bit of a push again, starting to creep up on the top teams. They're only, I want to say, 2.5 games, 3.5 games, 2.5 games behind Houston for third going into tonight. And, now they're probably not going to catch them. They're only 2 games ahead of Utah, who should be able to pass them. And then you've got and then behind that, it's Memphis and Oklahoma City, who are 4 games back. It depends. I haven't really looked at the Clippers schedule upcoming, but I'll tell you that the one silver lining is at least a week and a half or so of this time that he's going to be out is the All-Star break.
Yep.
He won't miss quite as many games as he would have otherwise.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I'm with you on the Clippers are cursed. And I tweeted Justin Termini yesterday, and he tweeted me back and said he can't argue with that one. I believe it's true. The organization is cursed. And as a Cubs fan, I have to say I'm not really believing curses anymore. But when it comes to the Clippers, they're cursed. It's the same, and it's always Chris Paul and it's always Blake Griffin every year. They just can't. But Chris Paul's had injuries. He's been hurt when he was with the Hornets, so maybe he's just a tad. I'm not gonna say he's Derrick Rose-like, but maybe he's just a tad bit on the brittle side.
Yeah, and then you got to look at last year in the playoffs. Both of them went down, so they lose to the Trailblazers in 6 games, and
didn't they go down the same game?
Yep.
I think they did. Yeah. And they come back renewed this season. They started out hot, and you're like, wow, this is finally the year, and then boom, Blake Griffin goes down. Now Chris Paul goes down, but. I'm kind of an optimist on the other side of things. If they fall down in the standings, say they're 6th, and you get San Antonio in the 3rd spot, that's a heck of a matchup for them to go up against with healthy Chris Paul, healthy Blake Griffin. They could actually maybe steal that first round win.
And they've played San Antonio well the last few years. They beat them a couple years ago in the playoffs, so they can do it.
And then the other side of things, personally for Chris Paul, you've got to look at, obviously, he's in line for the 5-year max contract. Do you give him the $200 million, or do you say, well, you've been injured, you're getting a little older, maybe not quite the max? And then you've got to look at J.J. Redick and Blake Griffin are free agents as well. So a lot of choices to make for the Clippers coming up for sure. Going into our last topic of the evening, Matt, I know you wanted to touch on kind of what happened. If you can call it a real competitive game, I don't know that you can. The Warriors and the Cavs from the other night.
Yeah, it was just a complete annihilation. And I'm going to give a couple of stats out there just before I give a few thoughts on it. The Cavs, they shot 35% from the field, 26.5 from 3. They were out-rebounded 58-35, obviously, with all those misses. The Warriors hit 15 threes, had the 37 assists. But what I noticed, and we talked about it on Monday, the key, and I didn't make a prediction because I didn't know how Steph Curry was going to play because he's been just crap against them the last 4 or 5 times. But he just was in attack mode from the opening tip. It seemed like Kerr had the ball in his hands a little bit more. He wasn't running as much off the ball, which I think helps because now he's not getting banged up when he's running, trying to get open on screens. Guys aren't able to bear hug him and knock him around. So I think that helped. And, He had the 10 assists at halftime. Durant was fantastic. Clay made shots. Pachulia, they just were really good. Iguodala was making shots. And then here's an interesting stat. When the big four for the Warriors were in the game, Draymond Green, triple-double. When the big four were in the game, the Warriors had and this was in the first half of the game when they really blew them out, the Warriors had an offensive rating of 140 and a defensive rating of 72. So that just shows what an annihilation it was. And, like I said, Pete, we both said it. When they win the game, the excuses are going to come. Well, it was the last game of a road trip. Always excuses when the Cavs lose. We got to stop with excuses. They got destroyed.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's excitement for both sides to build as the finals matchup comes upon us, and I personally think that it's going to end up being those two teams in the finals. But the interesting stat for me was the fast break points for the Warriors. They had 34 fast break points in the first half, so basically, that shattered their previous season high. And then you look at the assist ratio as well. The Warriors at halftime had 26 assists to the Cavs only having 4. So, not a lot of encouragement. Yes, I threw out the J.R. Smith's not playing. That'll probably be a main reason fans have. But, the Cavs just didn't have it this game, and I'm not going to throw too much stock into it just because, basically the Christmas Day game, the Warriors lost. So, it's either way. But, Keith, do you have any thoughts on, the game as a whole?
Yeah, I mean, it was great to see Golden State win. I think it would have been almost more impressive had they won in a close game, as weird as that sounds. Because the Cavs, I think they just went to they basically went into coast mode pretty early. They were tired. It's the end of a long road trip. So I think it is more or less them just, not They didn't have the full effort that they needed to have. A lot of it was the Warriors got out and ran. They really frustrated them on the perimeter, I think more so than they had. In previous games, they stayed attached to guys a little bit better. In the kind of losing streak that they had gone on, that 4-game losing streak against Cleveland, Cleveland got a lot of wide open jump shots. And I think the Warriors were able to stay connected a little bit more. And I don't know how much J.R. Smith matters or will change things in the grand scheme of things. And I don't know how much this matters all that much. It's outside of, upsets would be fun and all. But if you're a neutral basketball fan, you want to see Cleveland Golden State round 3 again, hopefully all fully healthy in there for the finals to watch them go at it. And I don't know that we're going to really remember what happened on Christmas or on MLK Day.
Exactly. I think it's all going to be, out the window at that point. But want to dive into the Warriors and the Thunder. We're going to kind of preview that matchup. The last matchup that they have, the Warriors annihilated the Thunder 122-96. And so Russell Westbrook's going to look to avenge that 4 of 15 shooting from that game. But, Matt, I'm going to go to you. First, what are you looking for out of the game tonight?
I want to see how Russell Westbrook plays tonight because the Warriors in the last game, they just kind of walled him off and didn't really let him get to his spots and do what he wanted to do, and he was forcing dumb shots. So that's what I want to see, how he's going to come out, and I think he's going to play a lot better. Question for you, Keith, real quick. Is Steven Adams playing tonight?
Doesn't sound like it. I haven't seen an update in a while, but it sounds like he's going to be out. But it does sound like Klay Thompson is going to play. After he reported he was going to be out, it sounds like he's now back with the team and is going to play tonight.
That hurts with Steven Adams. I still think it's going to be a lot closer than the last game. I mean, Russell Westbrook, we know what a competitor the guy is. So I think this one could absolutely be close, especially coming off of that huge emotional high. I could see somewhat of a letdown from the Warriors tonight. And I actually wouldn't be surprised if the Thunder steal this one. It would not shock me.
Yeah, I'm not going to go that far. I think that Russ has an improved game, but I just don't think it's going to be enough for them to outlast the Warriors. But either one, go to you. What do you think about tonight?
Yeah, you just said my same thought. I think Russ will be good. I just don't think he's going to have enough around him to get the win tonight. And I think there's a better chance that Golden State will blow them out than there is that, they win. If they win, it's going to be because Russ puts up almost an inhuman effort to get it done.
Absolutely. Well, we're keeping it short and sweet for this episode, but before we get out of here, I want to throw it back to you, Keith, and highlight some of the great stuff that's going on with 16 Wins a Ring. Of course, we are a part of the podcast network for 16 Wins a Ring, but it's all you, Keith. Go for it.
Yeah, so obviously we got all the great podcasts. Please check those out. Get in there. Give all those podcasts a 5-star rating and review if you see them, deem them worthy of it. But written side, we had a lot of really cool stuff come out in the last couple of days. Georgie the Greek, he goes by, wrote about JJ Redick and his NBA path and how it's been kind of underappreciated. Vince Carter piece about how he keeps reinventing his game to stay in the NBA and stay relevant by Darway Chen. Then Brandon Anderson and Serge got together to write their definitive NBA midseason league pass rankings. So kind of a fun piece there, a little more lighter fare and fun read. And then our own guy here, Lance Roberson, wrote for us about Seth Curry and how he's kind of coming into his own as a player now and stepping out of Big Brother's shadow a little bit. He's really stepped into the starting 5 for the Mavs. So check those out. Those are our most recent pieces there. Get a lot of cool stuff. Keep checking us out. We get a lot of great stuff coming.
Absolutely. And we encourage everybody to continue to go to iTunes, subscribe to the Unquestionably Raw NBA podcast. Make sure you leave us a 5-star written review. It's very crucial that we get the written part. Just leave a few words of what you like, what you don't like, maybe some topics of interest that we can cover in the future as well. So we want to thank everybody for listening to tonight's episode, and we will be back Friday evening with another episode for you. So till then, thanks for listening to the Unquestionably Raw NBA podcast.